open their Riverside tab. That's weird.
Hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, it's
Oh, there we
open.
go.
Yep, says it's uploading.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's the way it should be. Huh. I
Okay.
don't know. Yep. All right, let's do this and we will get going. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Kronos Group podcast. I am your host. I'm not your post, I'm your host, Jerry Brazee. And today we have with us Shad Tidler. Let me tell you all about him. He has been part of the Lucian sales team since 2014. And this guy's got all kinds of experience. I was excited about having him on because I got a big push going into the sales side of things. And I think it's really important that more of us as entrepreneurs talk about it. He is a transformation consultant who helps clients build scalable sales strategies and processes that actually work in the real world. No hyper pressure on those, but clarity and repeatability. That's the important part. He's also an Ironman triathlete, swimming, biking, running, insane amount of miles, all of the above there. That discipline will show up everywhere in how he thinks about sales and leadership and long-term performance. Also invested in his community, in particular the Leukemia and the Lymphoma Society. We will ask him about that and see if there is a reason why those in specifically. And above all, he values being a good husband and a good friend. So, Shad, I am excited to have you on. Thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Jerry. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Let's go to the background before we get into what you're doing today. Kind of give us, you're in Indiana now. Give us, where did the young Shad grow up and come from?
Actually, just about an hour north of here, but it's been a full circle getting here, Jerry. So I grew up in a little farm town called Tipton, about 10,000 people, and it's been somewhere between 9,700 and 10,000 my entire life. Small farming community, and I thought coming out of high school, going to college, I was going to be an engineer at Purdue. And you can see that worked out perfectly as I'm now a sales consultant, right?
As is usually the case, right?
That's usually the case. So I went. I was good at physics and math in high school, and went on a campus visit. And my sophomore year was like, "That's it, I'm done." And I got in, and went through a year of engineering, and then went, "This is not for me." And I didn't have any other plan because I always thought the engineer is what I was going to do. So I just on a whim from my sister, whenever I talked to the business school, got out of there. Actually lived for a year in Bangalore, India, doing tech consulting right out of college. Literally moved there a month after college. Came back and I got back the beautiful 2001, the month that the tech market literally bottomed out here in the U.S. And so I got laid off. Luckily, had done some work interning at Merck Pharmaceuticals on the East Coast and got back on a job with them in logistics operations, and then moved up to New York City in my late 20s. That's where I got into sales. And I was working for a large 3PL company doing inside sales. And then people I worked with there, as I was helping some of the sales team, said, "You'd be really good at outside sales." Took a transfer in 2010 back here to Indiana, coming full circle, doing outside sales. And somewhere right around then was when I became client Lucian for about 3 years, because I was a wing it sales guy. Like I could do things, but if you looked at me and went, "How do you do those? Like, what do you do in particular?" I wouldn't be able to tell you. I kind of, well, maybe this, maybe that. And I said, if I want to get good at this thing, I got to get some help. And so I became a client. And then 2014, I said, I'm ready after 15 or so years to get out of the logistics industry. I'm going to do something to help a lot more people. I just didn't know what it was. And I mentioned it to one of the coaches here that I was working with. And he said, "Why don't you come work for us?" And about a month later I was, and that was 12 years ago.
And back to India for a minute. I've spent some time over there. It was some of the worst times I've ever spent abroad. I've traveled the world extensively, and India for me was, it's like Western China. Eastern China is beautiful. About every couple of time zones you go to the west of China, you go back 100 years. What was it like for you back in 2000? I think you said 2000, 2001.
Yeah. A lot different from what it's like now. And I was just talking to someone from India yesterday, and we were talking, and she lives in Bangalore, which is where I was. Back then, I mean, the middle class was just forming. And I'm sure it's still like this. I haven't been back since 2001. But you had a very big dichotomy between the really rich and the really poor, and a middle class was just starting to form. And then cities and work were just starting to catch up. So the big problem in Bangalore was that's the tech capital, and that was really where tech was shifting at that time. A lot of people were coming there for work, but the infrastructure couldn't keep up with it. So roads were half built or they were breaking down because there was so much volume on them. Electric grids were, I mean, India already had like rolling blackouts and brownouts with electric, but it was even worse in Bangalore because there was such an overinflux of people and business going on. But the thing with that was a lot of things were just being formed for the first time, right? Business wise, it was like the Wild West. Companies were popping up just out of nowhere and exciting new things. And then when you like, yeah, that was the hustle bustle of the city. But when you got outside and you traveled to like these places that were thousands of years old and, and just experience things that you never would experience here. I'm sure like in China or Western China, and I've been mostly to Eastern and to Northern to Beijing. But when you experience those things and then you meet the people and the genuineness, yeah, I mean, it's a tough country and one of the hard, I mean, by far, I'm with you. One of the hardest places I've ever traveled in all the places over the world. But there was so much greatness there if you could get through the tough outer layer when you were there.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine that spent a bunch of time there, I think in and around where you were, in an area he called Tech City. Is that?
Yep. Yep. That
Yeah.
was where it worked actually. Yep.
Okay, so he spent a lot. This is probably 12 years ago, so maybe half as long ago as you. And he said it was fantastic, except when you looked out your window, because you'd have what people don't understand, I think, about India is how close
Yeah.
poverty at a level Americans can't understand butts right up against the brand new building.
Yep. Yep. And that's like, yeah, usually like in the US or Europe and a lot of Western countries, like you have some sort of kind of divide between them, or it's a
Mhm.
gradual change. There, it's literally, yeah, you could have a poorest of poor in a slum area right next to the nicest, richest hotel or new high
Yeah,
rise.
yeah,
It's my wife's from the Philippines, and we went there first together in 2018, and we went to Manila where she's from, and so she's like trying to prepare me. She's like, "You're going to see really poor in Manila, and this," and she was forgetting I haven't spent time in India and already experienced it. And I remember we went like the first day we were there, we had a little like bus that we had a driver and rented, and we're going somewhere in the city, and we went through one of the poorest parts of Manila, and she looked at me right after, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Why? I'm fine. Why?" And she goes, "That was literally one of the worst slums or parts of Manila." I go, "That was it?" And
yeah.
she, "Really? You're not shocked?" I go, "No, I went through I walked through almost daily much worse areas in India than what I experienced." So the one, another piece from it is traveling, like being in a environment like that where you see that when you travel to a lot of the rest of the world, you're just, like you're almost like you're not expecting it, but you're okay with it because you're like, I've seen areas where it's even tougher than this.
Yeah, I think that I say to people, get out and travel and go to the parts of the don't go to the tourist places.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
to these places, or at least when you do, make sure you go to the more local places, because places like India, I feel like I have a superpower because I've seen 8-year-old boys that live in train stations that
Yeah.
turn tricks to huff so they can huff paint,
Yeah.
and they're everywhere. And when you've seen that, it's hard to come back and complain about sales
Mm.
pressure or any of
Uh,
the rest of those things. Not that we just pulled the rug right out from underneath this podcast, but I think that it's important from a
yeah.
perspective, either professionally or home life, just generally living, how good we have it, even at the worst here in the United States. And I think I'm a better employer and a better entrepreneur and a better husband and a better father and a better friend because I've seen those things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things is when you see that, you put things in perspective and you go, no matter what, and if you think of an entrepreneur, right, Jerry, like building their business, like there's tough times. Like there's times where you're like, is this going to work or not? And like, like my livelihood and everything's right on my family and other people. But if you've had those experiences, you go, okay, it can be a heck of a lot worse. Like,
Yeah.
and we got this and we're going to figure it out. And it's not that bad.
Perspective when dealing with the travails that come with being an entrepreneur or trying to function, in any business endeavor. Perspective is absolutely, I think, a superpower. If you can keep
Yeah.
yourself grounded onto what others' realities are, your life doesn't seem so difficult. Let's talk
Yeah.
about, so when it comes to sales, this is something that every entrepreneur gets just inundated with. And
Mhm.
sales have they have all different kinds of connotations and definitions, and people come at it from very different angles. And so, what I found in doing these podcasts and over the years, all the business that I've done, is it's best to kind of give the listener an idea of when we say sales relative to Shad, what are we talking about? So, give us specifically what it is. What direction are you coming from?
Um, so when we talk about sales here, it's a lot of times with businesses we work with, they're growing. It's not a hey we're flattened out or we're going backwards, but some are, but a lot are growing, and it's more about being intentional with that growth, right? So Jerry, like you're mentioning, like entrepreneurs, like a lot of times when they start out, it's like they've got a great idea or a great product or great service, and a lot of the early growth is due to there's people they've known in their network, personally, professionally, et cetera, who there's a gap in their filling. Well, there's going to be a point where that network is tapped out, right? And maybe they can go a little bit more, with a bit like it's tapped out or they've gone to it. And that's where things start to level off. And so they've got to be going, okay, intentionally, how do we grow this thing? And I just talked to an architecture company here in Indiana today, and the leader there, and he said, hey, we've grown, and they're a good size, like you would say, like in here in the US, be like a mid-sized firm in terms of revenue and size of people, et cetera. But it's not been intentional. It's all word of mouth, referrals, et cetera. And so he said we need to be intentional for some particular reasons with growth, but we don't know what that means and what that takes to do that, right? And so it's about going, okay, let's be intentional about where we're going, like set that goal and perspective and vision and get clear about it, make sure we're aligned, but then let's also make sure we've got the right strategies, the right tools, the right people, and the right skills for them to be able to grow where we want to and do it intentionally versus just it kind of happened or it didn't.
I've been in business now. I started my first company at 28 years old. And over that time, I've owned, built, bought, and sold a dozen businesses. I just started my 13th one in a peer to peer group. Done almost $500 billion in revenue over all of those years. I belonged to a peer to peer group
Mm-hmm.
for 25 years now. Of guys that when I joined, I was 30 and they were in their 50s, and now they're in their 70s and 80s, and I'm in my 50s. I've been in and around business my entire life. If there is one thing, I said all that not to, that kind of sounded like a brag. I didn't mean to. I'm trying to give the question
Mm-hmm.
some breath here. In all of that, the
Mm-hmm.
recurring frustration with almost every company I've dealt with is sales, and in particular, being sold on a way to sell in a way that produces results. I
Mm-hmm.
personally have flushed more money down the toilet. I mean, fortunes by anybody's estimation. And then again, in that group and in that circle, just millions and millions and millions of dollars flushed away because the process didn't work for whatever the reason is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could have been my fault. The process wasn't going to work. So this is I guess my point in saying all that is this is a common concern among operating entrepreneurs is I want to grow sales, but it seems like every time I grow sales, whatever it is I'm trying to do, it never works. And every promise I get made, it's like I'm going to grow your brand online. Just hook up with me and you're going to have 1,000 followers, right? And then it all looks good and it's pretty and it never comes to any fruition. And so that's why I was excited about having you on. And I'm going to have more sales professionals on because I know there's a reality to that, but in the same sense, there's a lot of it that's just wrong and bad actors and all the rest of it. But it's a legitimate frustration
Mm-hmm.
on the entrepreneur's part, and that's the whole point of this podcast. So,
Right.
in that context and that long-winded question I just asked you, hopefully you remembered what it was.
I think I'm with you still.
How how would you respond? I just want to make sure you know I got experience at what I'm talking about here, right? And I'm trying to bring real answers to the entrepreneurial community. And so I ask it in that way to let you kind of defend it a little bit, but
Mhm.
also give us your perspective on our perspective.
Sure, and not uncommon, I hear. Here, well, I'm going to ask you is why do you think those things don't work? Like all those like, hey, if you just give us this, we're going to get you all these leads, or we're going to close these deals. Why do you think those don't work?
I it's been tried. I've either been a part of it or watched it being done in so many different avenues that
Mhm.
it could be the complexity of it, the overpromise of it, the amount of effort put in on on our side, on the buy side, if you will, as a person purchasing it. It could be the personnel. It could be the dedication. I think I the it could be an overpromise. I'm going to say overpromise is probably 60% of the problem, maybe
Mhm.
70% of the problem, and then getting it out and making it operational, so 30, 35% I'll put it on us. But there's a big delta between what
Mhm.
is promised and what reality is, even if implemented, specifically and exactly from my perspective.
Yeah, and you're 100%. And the thing I see in my experience of doing this, is we're not addressing the underlying things that are missing and the challenges that are there that are unique not only to the business and how it's set up to grow, but also to the people that are going to be part of it.
Mhm.
So what happens is you're absolutely, it's like people are like, oh, just we'll get you this many leads or we'll help you close this, right? Well, here's the thing is, if you don't, if there's certain things that are missing from a structural standpoint and the business to support that, then yeah, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it's not going to complete the whole thing or get you to the goal. And if there's certain challenges with your people trying to do sales, and when I say challenge, it might be a belief or mindset that they have to get past or make more productive, or it might be a skill set or gap that they have, or maybe there's a motivation or piece that you can't fix. That's the problem, is we're not working on the right end. And be like going to your doctor and going, hey, I just need this, like, and he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to give you this prescription without really addressing and really diagnosing and getting into what's really causing it, and we're going to just hope it works. Like, you don't walk away and go, what the hell? No, I'm not going to go
Mhm.
take that. I'm going to go get
Right.
a second opinion or go on WebMD and figure out like, no, that sounds horrible, right? You go, there's no way. And so a lot of the key is do we take a first step back and go, let's evaluate and find out if we're going to really go after this from sales. Like, let's look at our people and our strategies and structure and go, what's missing and what's not lining up there. So if you think of your people as you go, okay, if I want my people to go out and sell more, you got people who are business development or salespeople, right? You got to go, okay, are they motivated to do that? Right? Are they actually committed to do that? Um, do they have beliefs that are lining up with that? So things like, it's okay to make cold calls and interrupt people if I need to do that. It's okay to stand my ground when people are trying to push on price and make it all about price versus value, right? And do they have the skills and tools they need all throughout the process and able to execute them regularly to be effective?
Mhm.
Even your managers or leaders, same thing. Are they effective coaching people to be able to do that more effectively? Are they effective and have the tools to hold them accountable? Do they even know how to motivate their people in the right way? And then if you look at the strategy and structure of the businesses, or okay, hey, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, you got goals and things in your head and go, this is what's ideal. Are those clear and communicated down to your people and they understand why? And they are in line going, I understand what that means and what to go after. Structure, like, do we have a process that we can use and go, if a deal's falling off, right? You're like, this looked really good. Did we truly qualify it? Did we miss something in the process? And can we go back and either fix at that point or correct going forward to make sure we don't do it again? Right. That's usually there's underlying stuff missing that causes that. And yeah, there's a lot of overpromise out there, but then also is the organization's got to be set up to be able to effectively do those things and fix those underlying problems.
You hit it on the head 100%. I'm reminded. I think probably this is what turned me and my group against outside sales consultants and bringing it inside and just trying to figure it out as we go was
Mhm.
probably 2014, 2015. One of my guys, entrepreneur, very successful, had a company doing about $12 million a year, and he was doing signage of all different kinds and shapes. And he was growing pretty well, but he wanted to hyper grow it. He was growing on word of mouth and he wanted to put sales in. And again, all of us had been down the same path. But to your point, the guy he brought in, the group that he brought in, had the programs, had the whole thing, put it in place. It was fantastic and it didn't work. And so when the owner, my friend George, asked, how come, it's not working? And he said, your guys aren't doing it correctly. And George's response is, why didn't you tell me my guys weren't doing it correctly? Why didn't you tell me that we weren't equipped to do this? Why?
Yeah.
Well, it's your job. I mean, essentially came down. It's your job. It's my product. It's your guys' job to implement it. And he was like, wait, wouldn't it be your job to make sure we have the V8 will fit in that car, and otherwise I need to have a 4-cylinder because there's not room in the engine bay? Isn't that up to the person selling it? So I'm just remembering that story.
Yeah.
Probably 2014, 2015. To your point exactly, we get sold things that maybe we're not ready for, which then again the blame goes back to the person selling it to us.
Well, yeah. Well, it's a mismatch between those things, right? So I was meeting yesterday with the early stage company out of Canada I got referred to, and as I'm sitting down talking to them, like they're just not ready for putting these things in place from a selling standpoint. There's some manufacturing and certification things. There's some getting clear on their end as to where they're going. It's stuff that I can't fix, right? It's like, you got to get clear on that. Now, once you get clear, then we can analyze and figure out maybe there's some things you've already put in place that are going to be supporting that we don't have to work on, or we just need to tweak. Maybe there's some big things missing, and we can analyze and figure that out. But that's the whole key, is we got to figure that out. And a lot of times, and I saw this too, Jerry, in my career, is like when I first got trained coaching before I found my way to Lucian, like I remember I took a course and it was like, they gave you this process, this 8-week thing, great, but it didn't address things like the fact that I had a hard time talking about money with prospects. And that was a deep-rooted belief from when I was a kid and an experience I had with my mom around that. It didn't address facts that I had a hard time having certain conversations. It didn't help me. Okay, hey, here's this process, but how do you tweak or adjust it to this real life of the logistics world I was in? It was a little bit different than just here's a general process. And I've seen that where they just go, here, do this and it'll work. And you're like, well, but wait a minute, there's so many little nuances. Like my people, this person, like Bob here, is different from Susan here. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you, and that's one of the things you gotta really assess that up front and figure out, okay, what is there, what's missing, what are we working with, and then adjust it to that organization. And then as you're helping implement the tools, it's not a slap it on and it'll fix it. It's let's adjust this and let's tweak to your particular situation and even to those individuals so it's more natural to them.
I want to go back, and I agree with that. That's fantastic what you said. I want to go back to something you said. I think it needs to be restated and maybe give it a little more context.
Okay.
You were uncomfortable giving pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You were uncomfortable talking about money.
Yeah.
That is of the, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of people I've dealt with in the entrepreneurial space or want to get into it and are trying to grow. Absolutely a killer. I think many people suffer from this. And I always say, as I go to consult with companies, so many entrepreneurs think they're the only ones that have the problem that everyone has.
Right.
And so this is
because you're the top of the food chain, so to say, in your world, right? And you're kind of on an island unless you've got a good peer network. So it's natural to go, gosh, I might be the only one. I got to be the only one dealing with this.
That's right. So then I don't talk to anybody because I'm the dumb one and I don't want anybody to know that. It's absolutely prevalent. But money is one of those things that come up constantly, that it's so hard to not only to ask for money, right, in terms of a price, but then also to evaluate that money. I've given advice many times that you have too many customers, you're too cheap. Get rid of half your customers and double your price, right? That sort of environment. But our brains, your mother's influence on generally our brains, to me, don't seem to be built to do that as a baseline. So let's flesh that out a little bit more, if you would.
Yeah, good point. So I'll explain kind of a little bit about the situation with my mom and then how that plays into this. So I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. I believe I was 7. I was born in 77, so about 84. Back then I was just getting into like cars, right? Me and my buddies, right? Like 7, 8 years old and like cars. So I like reading like Car and Driver magazine. I go to the grocery store and like be checking it out. Well, we lived next door to a neighbor, and I think he worked for a GM plant close to us, and he must have been like an executive or a top sales guy. So I don't know if they still do this, but back then, like every 6 months or so, he would get a new car to drive. And it was 84, and he pulls up in their driveway in this cherry red, beautiful 84 Corvette. And I mean, I'm just getting in the cars. I'm outside, like playing in the yard, and I see it. I come around. My mom was doing something outside. It's like, hey, mom, did you see the Robertson's car? And she looks at her and she's like, yeah, that's really nice. Like, she's not a car person. She's like, no, it just looks really nice. And I'm not thinking about it because I didn't have any concerns about it. I went, I wonder how much they paid for that, because I'm relating it to the Car and Driver magazine, like, and seeing like price, like the MSRPs and stuff like that. And I remember I just got a smack upside the back of my head, and I turned around shocked, and I went, and she goes, "You don't ever ask what people spend on things." Now that was kind of how the family was raised, and money wasn't really talked about in our family. And usually, when it was a lack of, or how we're going to pay for this, or we didn't expect this. And so therefore, early on, I got this negative connotation with money, that if I bring it up, start talking about it, some sort of bad situation will happen. Well, fast forward again to sales. What's one of the things I have a problem talking about is money, right? Because I'm expecting, even though I know logically it doesn't make sense, and I know logically is like, if we're selling our service, like logistics services, what I was selling, there's got to be an exchange of money to pay for that and the value. But I was expecting mom to show up and that bad situation to happen. And that would take over emotionally. So what did I do? I called it the old quote and hope. So Jerry, I'd send you a quote, kind of cross my fingers, even though we hadn't talked about the actual price, and if that's even you're willing or able, even fits in what you'd be comfortable with, and just kind of hope that it would work. Some
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
Heck of a lot of times it didn't, because most people went, "Oh my God, that's more than I expect." They got sticker shock. Until I dealt with my concept and okayness around money, and I did it by reading books on money, by listening to talk podcasts and things like that, by talking with people who had more money and better with money than I did, and just getting myself comfortable having this conversation, until I got better with the concept and going out and buying and spending larger amounts of money and being okay with it. Until I changed my concept, it didn't become more natural to have that conversation and to not fear something would happen. And a lot of people have that because of how we're raised, and also the taboo. What they always tell you growing up: don't talk about money, sex, politics, and religion.
Mm-hmm.
The four horsemen, right? So
Right.
a lot of people have that, but it makes it harder selling, because either you don't talk about it and bring it up, or you have a hard time dealing with larger amounts, or you'll be willing to discount as soon as somebody goes, "That's a lot of money," or, "Gosh, can we work on that price?" Because you're like, "I'm uncomfortable with it and how to handle it."
From those four things, though,
Mm-hmm.
I teach that you only talk about one of them. The other three you leave out. There's no business in business
agree,
for any of those other things.
You're always growing up, you're like, don't talk about these four things, right? And that's a
Right.
big one. But then you're contradicting in what you do in selling, is like, you have to talk about money. That's just part of it,
Right.
right? So,
But leave the sex, religion, and
yeah.
politics at home. Yeah, I always say my sex, politics, and religion, or whatever the person across from me's table is. Yeah.
I agree. I agree on that.
Just to be clear, because there's a lot of that going on. And I mean, I know companies I know people who have spent money opening storefronts, but they refuse to cater to a specific political side. And I'm like, are you crazy? Why are you flushing money down a toilet? And they'll be adamant that they can do it.
Their money spends the same way as anybody else's, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what side they're on. Yeah, that's a great answer. I appreciate that. So, for younger professionals, before I ask you that, so a customer comes to you, an entrepreneur comes to you. Give us a quick rundown. What is it specifically that they could expect from you? Because again, I don't care what company it is. Every company has sales issues, and I want to make this point. I started my first company at 28. It went tits up in that first year. 1 year later, I got fired by the people that did the investing. 17 days later, I went and started my own. And then I did 4 million, 8 million, 12 million, and 14 million. Average ticket price was $7 in the transportation industry. Oof. And so I was really good at selling, but I had a big problem, Shad, big problem. I didn't know how to sell profitably. I hadn't learned how to do that yet.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, man, I can sell like nobody's business. And I had to learn those lessons the hard way. So, and it was the group and bringing people from the outside that taught me how to do that and how to approach that and those sorts of things. So all of us, no matter how successful we are, no matter how great things are going, always need sales, and always needs good sales strategy. So with that context, entrepreneurs, everybody listening, Shad, we come to you. What specifically are you offering or providing us?
Well, first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna have a 1 hour conversation just to understand where you're at right now. Like, and so it's a great time of the year because it's like you got the 2025 numbers in if you're on the calendar year, right?
Mhm.
So let's look at that. Where was goal? Where do we actually come in, right? What's goal for this year? All right. And then where are you trying to go in the next 3 to 5 years? And then what's all the friction points getting in the way? We're going to talk about that first because that helps me get a picture of the lay of the land with you. And then from there, I can start to go, okay, hey, based on that, here's where we need to focus and where to help. Um, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about like why doesn't consulting and training and sales tend to work? It's that we're not working on the right end of the problem when we haven't diagnosed. One of the very first things we're going to do, and we use a set of tools through a company called Objective Management Group that are sales specific evaluations. We're going to evaluate your company. So we're going to evaluate your people. We're going to evaluate your manager, your sales manager, sales leaders, sales people. What's working already? What are they doing? Skills they got in place, mindsets, beliefs they're helping. What's missing? Right? We're going to evaluate strategy and structure. Are we aligned on strategy? People clear? Structure wise, we got the right pieces in place. We need to be effective, or we miss it. But it's like going to the doctor. It's like a lot of times the doctor goes, hey, I think it's this, but let's run some blood work before we ever
Mhm.
start prescribing. And that's what we're doing. Run some blood work here. Now from there, then we're going to go, okay, now here, based on this, here's all the things. Now that we've got all the stuff under the surface we can't see with the other things you've told us, here's the goals you're going after that we talked about in that previous conversation. Here's the path and the plan to get there, and start to lay out that path and plan. Now, the other piece from there is a lot of people are like, all right, great. You probably jump into just training right there. I go, no, we don't. We're going to work with the leadership for a few months before. So the sales leaders and sales managers. And people are like, why do you do that and not just jump in the train with your salespeople? Jerry, do you have kids?
I do, yes.
Okay, how old are they?
24, 26, and 28.
Okay. Remember back 20 some years ago, and if they were like, Dad, I want to learn how to swim. And let's say you didn't know how to swim, but you're like, I really want to teach them how to swim. How effective are you going to be out there if you're trying to teach them to swim and they're drowning and all of a sudden you
Yeah.
realize I can't swim?
Great point.
Right? It doesn't mean you got to be perfect, but you got to be at least effective enough and have the right tools and things in place, know how to use them to be that step ahead as we start to help your people. So that first few months, we're going to work through and evaluate and go deeper on the strategy and structure and put the things in place and get people aligned from the leadership side. We're going to work on skill sets from a leadership side and management side, like coaching effectiveness and holding people accountable effectiveness and motivating them and other pieces like that. And then we're going to kick off with the sales team and get going with the sales team. And still throughout, we're going to work with the leadership team on how do they reinforce and put those pieces into place with the sales team using the strategies and structure and skills and tools that we worked on ahead of time. And then how do they work on or adjust to the next problem or challenge? Like maybe, you come to me and go, hey, we need to get a lot more in the front of the pipeline. Great. There's going to be a problem, though, is that we start to do that and help your people do that, but then they can't qualify and close those deals. So you're going to get a really, really heavy pipeline and things are slowing down. Right? That's got to be the next thing we got to work on. So that's kind of approaches that we're going to take. We call it a crawl, walk, run. Crawl, let's do the analysis. Walk, let's start with the leadership and management and get that step ahead and put the right pieces in place and help them be effective. Run is we get the people in place, the salespeople, we're helping them be effective. And then we start and we get all those things working and training. And then we start to adjust and tweak things where we can run.
How much time is spent with the leadership on operations, the ability to facilitate should the work come in?
Operations is not my forefront. Now, I
Okay.
might be able to help them with let's map some processes and let's map out and figure out where, similar like we do with the sales process, where there's some holes and how to fix those. Let's get people aligned operationally, like aligning, especially operations with sales, with other, customer service, et cetera. How do I have certain conversation management? But we're not operations specialists. So, I can give them some guidance and direction, but I'm also saying, hey, if operations is an issue, you need to go find somebody that can help you get that aligned up, to be able to support this kind of growth. That was part of the conversation I had with the company in Canada yesterday. I was talking about was early growth is that they've got some operation, manufacturing volume things. I said, before we talk about sales stuff, guys, in my experience, you got to get this stuff in place, because
Mhm.
my fear is we start putting these things in place, sales stuff starts taking off, and then you're going to kill yourselves because you can't deliver.
Yeah. If you can't deliver, there's no sense spending money on trying to get the sale, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, if it's just going to fail, like you're going to cut your legs out from under you, before you even get going.
So for new or smaller entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
what some no, I'm gonna back up. I jumped.
Okay.
Is every business what they are providing sellable using using the kind of a basic framework? Meaning, can you sell an ice cream cone the same way that you could sell a widget out of a warehouse?
There's components that are the same, but there's nuances and differences of every business, right? If you think of an ice cream cone, right? Your markets are going to be different versus a widget out of a warehouse, right? Um, there's going to be certain times of the year where demand's going to be up versus that widget, depending on what industry they're in. But having a process, right, of maybe like when people are there and you're selling the ice cream cone, maybe having a process going, here's my process to ask them about, hey, what other what other products and things we have here that your family would want right now, right?
Mhm.
Or hey, I know it's really hot out there. As the kids are getting ice cream cones, they're probably going to want some drinks afterwards to wash down that ice cream, right? You still got to have some process in place, right? And things like that, and still be able to, people are asking for discounts and things like that to be able how to handle it. But it's different where you're having to go out and really create the demand, right? And those are the nuances. So there's pieces that are similar, Jerry, but there's differences in every business, right? And so that's part of understanding up front and going, okay, let's understand those, and then what of this framework and these tools and these processes and the things we're going to work on can we apply to your world?
Are rewards programs sales?
Give me a little more context when you say rewards.
The ice cream cone, 5 ice
Mhm.
cream cones and you get a free one.
Oh, gotcha. It's a part of retention and that customer service, right? So being able to offer those things and go, like, what is it that we can do to retain customers? Part of it too is to know your customers and go, is that valuable to them?
Mhm.
So just having this conversation with the architecture firm this morning, and we're talking about it, and one of the things is I said, well, do you really know what's most like important, like you're helping your customers solve, and where else you could help them? And what would be most important? And they said, yeah, we know that. I go, okay, great. So when's the last time you sat down and had that conversation with them? They're like,
Right.
well, we talked to them, the project, like how it's going. I go, no. When you outside of a project, because you're focused on that project, when you sat down and said, hey, let's talk about overall how service has been, what we've been helping you with, where could we actually improve, how else could we reward for you, and like what else could we do to help you? And they said, we really haven't done it. I go, let's talk about a framework of how to do that, because not only are you missing serving those customers and rewarding them for being good customers, but you're missing helping them in other ways, which keeps them sticky and coming back. One of the ways to keep your customers coming back is help them keep solving problems.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens I see is that people go, well, there are customers that are good. Like they know what we do. And this was the problem. The conversation I was having this morning with them. I go, do they really know the other services that you provide or the other projects work that you can do? And one of the partners brought up and went, here's a perfect example, like into last year where like I was talking to one of our customers and they're mentioning about this other project and I was like, we could totally help out with that. And I go, how many times did you talk to him about that before? I go, we hadn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
missing. So rewards are, yes, they're definitely part of sales and that retention customer service, but you also got to know what would be valuable to the people and your customers you're rewarding.
What do you tell entrepreneurs like me back in the day who was able to grow? And once I got to a certain limit or I got to a certain number, seems like the work just started to really flow in almost on its own to some extent because I got some size in a relatively smaller market. But
Mhm.
what do you tell entrepreneurs who don't have any issue growing necessarily? I got all the sales I need, everything's going great. Why should I invest any money in you guys?
Great point. And my first thing is I'm not going to tell them. I go, you're absolutely right. Maybe you shouldn't. Why do you think you should? And what I'm looking for there, Jerry, is if they go, well, because here's where I really want to get to. Yeah, things are going well now, but this isn't exactly where I want to get to. And then my question is, why do you want to get there? And what does that look like? So what most people are used to is if somebody says that to them, they're like, let me tell you why you need us.
Yes.
And it actually has the opposite effect. They're hoping that if they say that to you, you're going to all of a sudden go, oh my God, Jared, you're right. Like, we need you. No, when people see that, that's how most people are trying to sell to them. So it actually has the opposite effect where they're like, wait a minute, you're like everybody else. You don't understand our situation. You don't even know what's important, where I'm trying to go. So I'm going to put the hand up and stop you at that point and resist. And I'm going to treat you like I do anybody else because you're trying to convince and force me. And nobody likes to be convinced. Yeah. I don't care what they say. Nobody likes it. So what you do there is the opposite of what they expect, to start to bring down some of the resistance and see if there even is a reason. And so the opposite is you go, hey, you might be right. You may not need me. You're doing well. You've grown to 37 million and work's coming in. You probably don't need somebody like me. And then they start to go, well, wait a minute. Well, no, I'm not saying I don't. It's just I'm not I'm not sure if you could help with our situation since we're doing well. What situation, or like where would you even want to take the company, right? Like, I know you're doing well now, but what does that even look like, and what do you think's even missing to get there? And all of a sudden now if there's something there, they start opening up because they go, you're actually walking away and you don't care. Like, it's not that I don't care, it's just, hey, whether I work with you or not, it's fine. It's just like I'm not going to try and convince you,
right?
And then the other thing is you got to be okay in that situation, going, hey, if there isn't anything there, and you're like, you're right, we're good. Like, I mean, I don't want to, like, I'm on a great path. I don't see you need help. Okay, let's part ways. I'm going to go find folks that are going, I need your help.
You never know when that call will come back around, but you answered that. That was the answer I would have said, which is that people, no matter where they are, don't necessarily are aware of what they need or what they want.
Right.
Sometimes you got to point, because as entrepreneurs, I always say it's like being in a hole digging. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody out there behind us telling us, I'm really busy. I'm digging really good. Well, there might be a better way to do it.
Difference between being busy and being productive, right? Or going where we want to and being productive with all that effort, or we just put a lot of effort because this is all we know, right? But there's got to be a reason to drive that. And I'm not going to fight you for that. It's just, hey, if there isn't, cool. Let's part ways. And if there is, let's talk about that and see if we can help. But I'm not going to try and convince you. It's like, no, you need to tell me why you want to go there.
I was healthy for most of my life. And then when I got near my 40s, I developed a 40% block in my left ventricle. And you're probably wondering what the hell is he going to ask me next? When that happened, I went from playing basketball.
I'm used to just like kind of flowing with this based on our conversation.
I told you, it kind of goes kind of wherever I've got to one of my questions, as a matter of fact. But as what it taught me as an entrepreneur at 28, and then I had all these 19 pills a day, and then I came into my 50s, and at 51 years old on November of 21, I was laying in a hospital, 110 pounds overweight, having 100 mini heart attacks, down 4 pints of blood. And I was like, I'm not going out like this. I used to be healthy. So I've lost 100 pounds, and I've ran 6 half marathons, broke my back when I was 19 years old. So I was addicted to opioids. I cut it all out January 1 of 2022. And it's given me a clarity about health relative to the rest of my life that I didn't understand nearly as well as I do today, which is that success is findable no matter what shape you're in, but it's easier when you're healthy. And so I think that success is downstream of health, because it makes doing something that is already hard to do easier. And if that makes in context, obviously, it doesn't make it easy. It just makes something very, very difficult easier to do. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this question, because you run triathlons, and that's crazy. I've run half marathons. Again, I got a broken back and all kinds of issues. So to me, I couldn't walk 100 yards without sitting down 3 times up until I started on my transformation. And I hate running, and that's why I go do half marathons, because I hate every second of it, but I need to go do something hard.
Right. Yeah.
But so, in that context, I tell that story because I learned that later in life, how important that good health is to how well I perform on my career, even at home life. husband, father, all of those things. What's your take on that with your background in doing these triathlons?
100% with you, and glad to hear and good for you. Of turning the health around. I just had a good friend of mine text this morning. He went in earlier this week with a heart attack and like 99% blockage, and thank God they caught it as early as they did. Just taking the effort. I started turning my health around in 2002, and it was off of more of a dare of a buddy of mine who was running a marathon, Chicago Marathon. It was like we would meet up every 6 months, and he was like, let's meet up in Chicago in October. I was living in Philly. He was living in San Francisco at the time. I was like, okay, we got friends in Chicago, but why Chicago in October? And he's like, I want to run the Chicago Marathon. Okay, cool. He just gotten into this like a year or two before. I'm like, cool, I'll come watch and support you, and I'll be hanging out drinking a beer on the sideline, right? And he goes, no, you're running it with me. And I was like, you're crazy. But he's like my competitive brother, even not related. So it's like, all right, I call him a few days later. I'm like, all right, let's do this, right? And that started it. And the thing I started to get out of that was that's where a lot of my discipline happened. Before that, I was not a very disciplined person, but I started going, man, I love the discipline and the feeling, and it aligned with the fact of like I would do a lot of my workouts in the morning and I have a lot more energy in the morning, but then also just how I felt through the day and my mental clarity. And the endurance events taught me the being able to push yourself and work through things, which relates a lot to entrepreneurship. Is my hat's off to every entrepreneur, because you're going to go through stuff that a lot of other people in life would go, that's stupid, why would you do that? Right. Same thing. People look at me with doing the Ironman. They're like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? Right. But you walk away going, I know where my limits are and where I can push. And that was a big thing I learned, especially training through the Ironman, is that the body will go a heck of a lot farther than the mind will. And it's, you got to push through the mind. And if you relate that back to sales and to business entrepreneurship, it's the same thing. Like you go as far as your mind says you can go. Right. It's most organizations, they only go as fast as the leader goes. And when the leader isn't going faster, right, or growing or expanding, the organization won't go any faster than that. That's the ceiling. And so that the endurance events to the health and all that was all of a sudden like I went, man, I can do, like I'm going and doing so much more and see my mind open up because I was able to push myself in those ways.
Yeah. So good. I'm glad to hear you say it. Sounds like mine was a little bit later in life, but nonetheless, the same sort of results. Yeah, it really brings it brought me back to a discipline that I had when I was younger, and then I lost as I got more successful in the middle of my career, and it brought it all back around. The Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Is there a story behind why you support those groups?
Oh yeah, I've been waiting for you to ask this since you brought it up at the beginning. So, so I'm actually on the board of Michigan, Indiana for leukemia and lymphoma, and I've done. Go back to my days when I lived in New York. Is I got that's where I started doing triathlons, just through friends of mine that were in the community there that I raced and trained with. They were part of Team in Training, which is the athletic arm of leukemia and lymphoma. So you go out, you train for a race, and they, depending on the city you're in, they have coaches that help you train and prepare, and you actually travel to the race team, but you also fundraise not only to offset the cost of it, but to a certain amount to help the organization. It's amazing, concept that they put together, and they do it well. Like the logistics around the LLS, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and their events is fantastic. I mean, I look at like Ironman for a triathlon, charity type events, LLS is hands down. Like they've thought of everything and they're great. So I've been doing those things for years. And then when I moved to Indiana, I got away from it, because of, starting up in the sales and new job, and then family and other things. And so I always want to get back to looking like LLS and helping out. And I had some thoughts around it, but I just kept always putting it off. Well, fast forward to 2019, my mom has a tumor in her colon, and they cut it out, but they discover a few months later that she has leukemia, very aggressive form, AML, and she's pretty far along. And so she has to go into chemo, and this is right at the start of COVID. So I literally remember, Jerry, we took her to a hospital and dropped her off for a month where none of us could see her. Like the only contact we had was through iPad that I had given her. Because they're like, you can't come in. I mean, she's already immunocompromised, and this whole COVID thing, like you can't come in. And I remember that was one of the hardest things I ever did. It's like, Mom, I can't see. And she's breaking down, and I'm like, we just got to drop you off. We got to trust everything. Anyway, she goes through that. She actually beat leukemia, and was in remission. And we were caregivers. My wife and I had her at our house in Indianapolis because we were close to hospitals. She beat it, but unfortunately, and this happens, I've learned through her situation and talking to other nurses, is that unfortunately she passed from colon cancer. She was in remission in mid 2021, early 2022, diagnosed with colon cancer, and it was about 2 months to the day that it took her life. And it was just the body just couldn't fight it. She was her immune system was so weakened from overcoming AML that a couple of colon cancer cells hung around, and they just had a feast as soon as her body was weak. And unfortunately, that took her. So I said at that point, I'm doing something to help these. And this was the first time cancer had ever touched me that. Like when I did stuff with the team in training, like I knew of people with cancer, and I'd lost a friend, but never had a family member. And especially someone, my mom and I are very, very close. And so I said, I'm going to do something to help. And so I got back into doing events with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I'm currently training for a 2-day, 75-mile-a-day bike ride up in Wisconsin in July that I've done the last 3 years fundraising for. I'm going to be doing that every year until my legs fall off. It's an amazing event. It's close to home. My wife, my sister, my brother-in-law go. We visit friends. We have these places we stay. We do it with the team. It's just an amazing 2-day event. But also raising the funds. And then I've been on the board here now for, I think I'm coming into my 3rd year, and now in a leadership position, because it's just my way to do something about it and not just go, I'm going to sit on the sidelines of these horrible diseases.
I'm sorry to hear that. And I love, though, the response. Down here in Tennessee, my father-in-law died in my house right before I moved here 6 years ago up in Oregon.
Yeah.
Of cancer. And then my mother-in-law died in our house here in Tennessee of cancer a couple of years later. But that's not after we would go visit her through the window from the outside during COVID. And
Yeah.
she would, put our hand up against the window, and we have all of those pictures and that sort of thing. At least we had that, I suppose, relative to you couldn't even get in the hospital. But
Yeah.
tell us something.
Great. I'm sorry to hear about that.
No, go ahead.
Parents passing. Like we had my mom in our house, and I was honored to be a part of it. It was also,
Yes.
You talk about resilience. It's one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life.
Yes. That's my wife. We've been married 28 years, took care of them.
Mm-hmm.
It was humbling and fantastic to watch. I couldn't have been prouder or more sad for her if I tried. It's just all of those emotions at the same time.
Absolutely.
Tell us something. I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I'm not sure the effort goes into fixing some of these cancers the way that it should be. Certainly, probably not the way I would go at it if I was given unlimited funds. Tell us something about cancer that we don't know.
I don't know if it's something we don't know, but to your point, what you're saying is, and this is driven a lot. I've been thinking about this a lot over the years of these experiences, and my sister-in-law, like, it was crazy. The year after, in 2023, she was diagnosed with the same form of cancer, and luckily she's in remission and doing really, really great. So like, I've seen the front lines of a lot of these diseases, like, very, very close. And so I'm listening to this book called Outlive right now. And a lot of times our medicine, and I'm a big fan, like, my family is family of nurses. I worked for a pharmaceutical company. I worked for Merck, I'm a big proponent, but the thing this book points out, and I truly believe, is that we're dealing with these diseases too late. So when they show up, right, versus earlier, and what's the things we can be doing earlier to mitigate them or eliminate them before they start, through lifestyle, through other forms of medicine. And I've been doing a lot in those last couple of years, just through some clients and other people, a lot of biohacking type stuff to try and figure this out. Because I just decided, I told my wife, we're talking about our goals in early January. I said, I've got these goals. I'm 49 this year, and I've got these health markers. And I go, these are the health markers I want to be in, not just now, but the rest of my life. Because the whole, like, a lot of the point of this book is you're going to pass some, like, we have not beat death. Like, we know that, right. But it's, how are you going to live out that last 10 years of your life? And are you going to live it out suffering and, not able to move, not able to do things, fighting off diseases? Or are you going to live it out, where that's mitigated as much as possible? And then it's really just natural causes at the end. That's what I'm big for, and I think that's where a lot of health misses, is that we're putting band-aids on. We're solving the symptoms, but not the underlying problems, and not focused on those.
I agree with that. Have you, just as an aside, have you paid any attention to what Dr. What's his name? Soon Xiong, the owner of the LA Times, is doing with Anktiva and his cancer medicine? I
No.
strongly suggest that you, Soon Xiong, he is the owner of the LA Times. He has a medical background. The drug is Anktiva. And if you go on to, he's been on all kinds of podcasts, and he's a billionaire. If you hear his story and his interactions with the medical community, with what he thinks he has, I think it'd be eye-opening for you. So look that up if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you a couple of questions here as we go out. I like to do a speed round. So these are just real quick, and just give me, couple of word answers, whatever comes off the top of your head here. So here we go. The most common sales mistake you see?
Not qualifying.
One habit that improves sales performance the fastest?
Truly listening and being in the moment.
Listening is a huge one. I agree wholeheartedly. Sale. What gets overcomplicated in sales the most?
Asking questions and uncovering what's most important to people.
Good. The biggest difference between, this is a big one for me, the big difference between activity and progress.
A couple things. Do we know what we're going after and why? And are we actually reviewing for that effectiveness? So the checkpoints along the way, or are we just doing the same thing again and again?
Yeah, perfect. And endurance sports, we kind of covered it before, but what would you say, doing these endurance sports, what has it taught you that business would not be able to?
I can do so much more than I really think at first. And it's just a belief thing 99% of the time. So like most time I'm held back, it is not, I don't know the behavior or action. It's not, I don't have the technique, or I can't figure it out. It's my mind's getting in the way.
Yeah. And the mind always gives out before the body.
Oh, heck yeah.
In business or in extreme sports or in lifting weights or anything.
When I did Ironman, I was always amazed by how much farther, even when I was like, I don't feel like I can go anymore, like how much farther my body could go. And it was usually my brain shutting down first.
Yeah. I love it. If you guys listening are leading a sales team, you're an entrepreneur, you're an operator, or you work for somebody with a sales team, clearly this man knows what he's talking about. It's worth reaching out to him and having a conversation at a minimum, as he just said. So Shad, with that said, how do they get a hold of you?
Go to our website, www.lushin, that's LUSHIN.com. There's a button in the upper right-hand side that says talk to coach. Hit that, select me, fill a little form. It gets to me, and then I call you within the next 24 hours.
I will, of course, have that address linked in the show notes so everybody can get to you. Hey, man, Shad, the hour went quick. That's how I know. It's about every 10th one, every 8th one, I have to fill the hour, and I'm in trouble. Right. This one was not that. It was fantastic.
Barry, you had some good, even though I had to kind of like understand where you're going, like once I picked up on that, you had great questions that really make people think. So thank you. It made it go quick too.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
There we go.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. No, that was great. And good questions. Yeah. Good insights and good questions.
You know what? I try to have a conversation. Like I said, that's the point of it. And it'll take me where I'm interested, really, more than I just have that insight from an entrepreneurial perspective. And so many of these podcasts, they ask questions and then they get quiet and the guy gives a canned response, and they ask a question and a canned response. And I don't want that. I want, here's what I experienced. Here's what I've been through. Tell me how I would have fixed this.
Right. Yeah, no, I love it. And I love you brought up the, hey, I started that first business and it went tits up, and like, that means this guy's got some good experience, because he rebounded out of that and kept going and figured it out. So
yeah, that's the American way, right? I appreciate it, my friend. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. And I'll update everything on Podmatch so we close this out. Okay.
Yeah. And it'll be, you'll probably see this come out 3 weeks, something like that.
Okay, cool, man. All right. Sounds good. If there's anything else I can do, let me know.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye-bye. Yeah,